Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with Tom DeSyrant. He's the executive director of the Utah Democratic Party, here to discuss the state of the party and the upcoming convention. Tom, welcome to the show. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let's get right into the nature of this 2022 election season for Utah Democrats. How critical is it coming off a 2020 election that was pretty rough for your party?
You know, 2020 had some really big highs and some really big lows. It was pretty depressing to lose Ben McAdams by such a slim margin. But you know, ever since 2016, we've actually gained gained seats in the state house and the state senate. Every year we've picked up at least one house seat, and I think that we can do it again. We're also going to be watching the Salt Lake City Council at-large race with Suzanne Harrison.
But as you take a look at 2022, how crucial is it?
You know, it's every race or every election is a really critical and important election, and we're going to be working really hard to go bring out those Democratic voters.
Let's talk more about that. But even beyond that, when you're in a state where unaffiliateds outnumber you 2-1 and Republicans outnumber you 3-1, that means you have to be reaching out to some of them as well to be able to win elections. You mentioned some gains in the state legislature. I'll give you that. Most people would probably look at that as modest gains. But as you mentioned, in 2020, you lost the Congressional District 4, also the county council race. So what is the party doing to try to reach some of these other voters that you're going to need in order for your candidates to be successful? How do you connect with them in ways you haven't been able to in the past is my question.
Yeah, so the party is really putting in a lot of new tools this year for us to go and reach out to voters better. We're doing a mixture of cleaning up some of our old data. We're also making it easier for candidates to get access to some of these tools that are really important, things like relational organizing. In addition, we really want to expand outside of just the Wasatch Front. For a long time, the Democratic Party, at least on a state level, has been focused on a few key legislative races. Over the next few years, you can expect to see a lot of investment going into rural Utah.
What is the message of the Utah Democratic Party, though, when you try to reach maybe more moderate Democrats or more moderate unaffiliated votes? Because, as I mentioned, that's going to be a crucial part in trying to get your candidates elected. You have to go back all the way to the 90s to find a Democratic winner of a statewide race here in Utah.
Yeah, you know, I definitely think the party can do a much better job of messaging. The fact is, we are the People's Party. We're the only big tent party in the state, and we need to do a better job of letting Utahns know that there's room for everyone inside the Democratic Party.
So let's talk specific values, though. How is it that you say you are the big tent party? And why isn't that message resonating at this point?
Yeah, I think that the Republicans do a really great job on the culture war. They find a few key issues to just zero in on and focus, when in reality, we know that's not what most Utahns care about. They can bring up things like CRT, which isn't even being taught in schools, when in reality, we know that people need a living wage. We see housing costs go up and skyrocket, but we see Republicans not being willing to go work on building more housing.
Okay, let's dig into that a little more, because you're exactly right. Those are key issues that are on the minds of many Utahns, as opposed to what Republicans aren't doing. What would Democrats do to fix that?
You know, I think that there are a lot of ways that we can incentivize cities to go build more multifamily housing. There is a lot more education that we can do from the state level to show that we need to have housing. The fact of the matter is, Utahns like to have big families. And I don't think anyone wants to stop Utahns from having big families. But we need to make sure that there are places for these young families to be able to move into when they're adults. You know, I ran for Mill Creek City Council this last year, and I won because I told people I'm 30 years old, got over $30,000 in the bank, and I can't afford a house in Utah. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal and something that's on the minds of many. My own children, I'm concerned about them and how they're going to be able to afford to live here. I'd like to get into the race for U.S. Senate with you for a bit. As you well know, two of the biggest names within the Utah Democratic Party in former Congressman Ben McAdams and Salt Lake County Mayor Jenny Wilson are saying we need to abandon the Democratic candidate and get behind this coalition to back independent Evan McMullin in the general election instead. Where does the party stand on that?
In the Utah Democratic Party, our delegates are the highest governing body. And this is something that will be decided on Saturday at state convention. The Utah Democrats have a long history of working with other outside groups to get these kind of top-level candidates elected. Let's go back to 2010 when Cheryl Allen was the candidate for lieutenant governor. She was a Republican legislator from Bountiful. Look, I don't know what Saturday is going to look like. I will defer to the delegates, and we'll see what happens then.
So the party isn't taking an official stance on that particular movement?
I think that it's tough to say who even is the party. The fact is, the delegates are our highest governing body. So yeah, the party will take a stance, and we'll find that stance on the 23rd.
But as far as the chair, executive director, which you are,
correct,
the party's not coming out.
We are deferring to the delegates.
Okay, gotcha. I asked my panel this question last week, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. What does it say about the relevancy of a party if you do indeed move forward and don't even nominate a Democratic candidate and instead get behind an independent?
I think that the Democratic Party is as relevant as ever. I think that the only thing that this shows is that Democrats have elected to be a big tent party. I think it's better when there are more voices being heard. And should the delegates and the party decide not to nominate a candidate, then that's what will happen this year.
Okay. Outside of that race, the state convention coming up this Saturday, what are some of the things we should be watching for?
I think that most of our big races were kind of settled in the Salt Lake County convention. We had 3 contested Senate races that are all going to a primary, as well as a couple of key House races that are they both were decided at convention. I do think it'll be interesting to see. We've got 2 candidates for congressional districts 2 and 3, and I'm expecting to see a lot of work done by both of those candidates in congressional district 2.
And you are an open primary, so talk about what that means for voters of Utah.
Yeah, that means that you can go and vote in the Democratic primary, no matter what party you're affiliated with. I do believe that if you are registered as a Republican, you need to request the Democratic ballot from your county clerk, and you can find out how to do that on your county clerk's website.
All right. Tom, great conversation. Really appreciate being here with us, and I'm sure you will be busy on Saturday.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.